The days of driving a Kia and being laughed at by other motorists are long gone. Buying a Kia these days is actually a very shrewd move, and the Kia Ceed has long been one of the best cars to come from South Korea to actually convince we Europeans out of our Fords, Vauxhalls and Volkswagens.
The new Ceed is wider, longer, but also lower to the ground compared to the old one. It starts off at around £18,000, rising to £27,000. It's better made, more spacious, nicer to drive, and finally loses the silly apostrophe in its name. But after years of being almost as good as the competition, can it finally be considered best of the breed?
Now I'm going to be answering that and many other questions in this in-depth review, but before I do that, make sure you subscribe to the channel and press that little bell icon so you know exactly when one of our videos lands. First things first though, and it's the styling. Now I actually think the Ceed is a pretty good looking car. It looks quite good from the front end. It can look quite aggressive depending on what trim level you go for, but as we move down the side, things tone down to the point of being a little bit dull by the time you get to the rear end. It hasn't got the crisp lines of a Seat Leon, but it does look a lot less busy than a Ford Focus. In many ways, it reminds me of a VW Golf. It looks restrained and refined. But of course, that's my view. I'm sure you've got your own personal views, but let me know what you think of the car in the comments section below. Now, it reminds me of the Golf in here as well for two very good reasons. Firstly, the design. Now, it's all very straightforward and logically laid out. You've got your touchscreen there within easy reach, but there's a row of actual physical controls. And there are ventilation controls, buttons and knobs. Remember those? It puts a Honda Civic and a Renault Megane to shame, honestly. Now, the other reason why it reminds me of a Golf is the build quality. Now, apart from its awful, fake, stitched, soft touch plastic across the top of the dash, everything else feels really nice, really squidgy, nice quality plastics, nice leathers used, but the knobs and the buttons have all got a nice tight quality to them. Everything feels really good, and it's obvious the South Koreans have been looking at the Germans here because the whole thing feels and works really nicely. Now, there's quite a good bit of storage in here. There's a nice cubby under the armrest, a couple of cup holders as you'd expect, little space down there. There's also a shelf which you can wirelessly charge your phone on some models, good sized door bins and good sized glove box as well.
That touchscreen is worthy of a mention too. It's standard on the most basic trim level, 8 inches on all cars apart from the entry-level 2 model, but even that gets a 7-incher. And while the graphics are a little unexciting and the screen isn't the sharpest, it all works very well and intuitively.
It's impressive back here as well. Now, the great build quality is extended back here onto the doors. That doesn't always happen in these types of cars. There's also quite a bit of space. I mean, knee room is pretty good. I'm just over 5'10", plenty of space for my knees. Headroom is not too bad either. You can fit 3 people back here, helped in part with the almost flat floor. And one thing I really like, which will impress family buyers, is the ISOFIX points. You're not going to lose these covers because they're attached, and the whole thing just feels really well thought out. There's armrest here with 2 cup holders. Now, overall, it is pretty good back here. Now, if you want more space, you're going to have to look at a Skoda Octavia or a Honda Civic. But the nearest rivals to this car, Focus, Golf, Astra, the Ceed is probably the best for rear seat space. It's good news around at the boot as well, because the Ceed has got a larger boot than a Ford Focus or a Volkswagen Golf. Now, if you lift up the boot floor, there's a place-rate space-saver spare wheel, which is very good, but you'll notice there is quite a drop down into the boot floor. But that can be remedied because the boot floor is a movable one, so you can slot it into its higher position, and once you've done that, it's a lot easier to load items. It also means you've got a almost flat loading area when you fold down the rear seats, which means when you're loading large suitcases, like the Carbuyer suitcases, it's a lot easier to push them as far forwards. Now, if you need more boot space, something like a Skoda Octavia or a Honda Civic would be better for you, but generally speaking, this is a very good sized boot.
For the time being, the range kicks off with the 2 model. A cheaper 1 model is expected and goes up through the Blue Edition, the 3, various GT line models, a lukewarm GT and this flagship First Edition. Now this car's electric leather seats and heated rear seats and sunroof are a little unnecessary. I'd stick to the 3 model as you get a wider engine range, 17-inch alloys and LED headlights. But if you can't afford that, the 2 model is well equipped too, with a whole range of safety kit other manufacturers charge you for, like lane keep assist, autonomous city braking, cruise control and high beam assist. Go for a 2 model powered by the 113 bhp 1.6 litre diesel, then you're looking at £19,500. A Golf is around £2,000 more, while a new Focus is £1,200 pricier, and in the Ceed, in excess of 60 mpg is easily achievable.
Now, if you don't want diesel power, there are a few other options. There's a 1 litre turbo petrol, a 1.4 turbo petrol, and a 1.6 turbo petrol. Now, the 1 litre 3-cylinder is a pretty good engine, nice and thrummy, quite urgent, but it hasn't got the best performance out of all the engines. Now, if you want a little bit more zing, you're going to have to go for the 1.4, and it's the engine we've got here. Now, we're not talking about sparkling performance by any means, but it's pretty decent. I'm doing 50 miles an hour, stamp on the throttle, and that's 60. It's not a bad engine, and it's quite quiet and quite refined as well. Now, with this engine, you can go for a 6-speed manual gearbox or a 7-speed dual clutch automatic. We've got the 7-speed dual clutch here. It's not as crisp. The changes aren't as crisp or as fast as a VW DSG, but at low speeds, the Kia's gearbox feels a little bit less hesitant than it does in the VW. One thing that is a little bit odd is there are no paddles behind the steering wheel, so you can't take manual control from the steering wheel. You can from the gear lever, but not from the steering wheel. The 6-speed manual is quite a nice gearbox. There's a nice change action to it, and if it were me, I'd go for the manual over the automatic. Handling wise, and the Ceed is, again, surprise, surprise, pretty damn good. It's not as sharp or as crisp as a Ford Focus or even a Seat Leon, and it's not quite as good as a VW Golf either. The Golf is very good at giving just the right amount of driver involvement, yet feeling quite refined in the process. But this is better than a Vauxhall Astra, I have to say, and it's also better than a Hyundai i30. Now, the things I like: the driving position, you get nice and low, there's plenty of adjustment on the steering wheel. It means that this is a very comfortable car to drive. The steering, it's accurate enough. It's not the last word in driver involvement, but really in these days of electric power steering systems, that's to be expected. A Ford Focus has got slightly crisper steering. There's a slight rubberiness to the way the Kia turns at low speeds, but once up to higher speeds, there's a nice weighting to it, and it generally feels absolutely fine. Now, ride, well, you're going to have to go for the 2 if you want a nice, comfortable, quiet driving experience, because in this car, the First Edition, and in the 3, you get larger 17-inch wheels. Now, the wheels don't thump into potholes, but they do. You can feel the difference in size. Now, the 17-inch wheels also kick up more road noise compared to the smaller wheels. Visibility out the front is pretty good. It's not quite as good out the back. The rear window is a little bit slitty and there is a large pillar there. But higher up the range you go, you do get parking cameras and all sorts of park assist systems, which should alleviate that problem.
Overall then, the Ceed is pretty impressive. It's well built, it's spacious, and just quietly gets on with the job you'd need it to. Yes, a few rivals are better to drive, but the Kia is great value for money. Factor in its 7-year warranty and it's a class act. To answer my original question, is the Ceed best of the breed? No, but it is one of them. If you like this review, then watch my video, the new Ford Focus and our hatchbacks playlist. And give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel by pressing the Carbuyer logo, and as ever, thanks for watching.